Awesome. Well, with that, we'll start jumping into the hands. So I'll go to Man first. Man, always a pleasure to be with you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So, first of all, I've got to start with a complaint. How does a Brit and an Australian have a show and somehow it ends up at 4 a.m. in India? Like, I'm literally the average time zone for you guys, man.
Yeah, I mean that's.
I think it's because he's on the other side of the nighttime, so it's morning for him, and that was like the best time we could get. Like I kept trying to negotiate him down, but this is like early morning for MonHop.
Yeah, dude, I was out till like 1 o'clock this morning, like out drinking last night, and then I got to like 12:30 before I left, and I was like, "Oh shit, I don't have a podcast to start in like 8 hours," so, so I had to get home, and I mean, I didn't drink too much, so I'm not really that hungover, but it was like a kind of oh shit moment at like 12:30 when I was at a bar, being like, "Oh yeah, I've got like 7.5 hours before I need to be up again to do this podcast," but anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would like to first of all, I'm very grateful for like the way our movement is going, and to Zulu's credit, here in India, I have met multiple people, mostly in libertarian circles, granted, but multiple people who have who are either very influenced by Zulu or like full on, anarcho-objectivist Zuluites. So, it's a global movement and it's only growing. And literally everybody who becomes part of this movement grows it further, right? And so, yes, the suspicion is confirmed. We're going to the moon. Liquid Zulu is going to be the world Soviet leader one day. So there's no question about that. And another thing would be basically I'll be here for a while. I guess I'll be here for 1 to 2 hours. I'll be interacting. I'll be if Zulu allows, I'll take the parts in which I am interacting and make a video of my own, in collaboration. And I'll try to be here for the Remnant as much as I can. And let's get started. I'm really excited and really excited to talk to everyone. So thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you.
Man, you're gonna have to get my permission before you use my intellectual property for a video on YouTube. So just bear that in mind, please.
My Lord,
Before you
MonHop.
publish anything, check with me. Otherwise, you'll be hearing from my lawyers.
Please, my Lord, MonHop. Please allow it.
I do have one super chat here from Steve Hart, but yeah, absolutely, you can use this podcast for whatever you want, make clips or whatever. Go ahead. And that goes for everybody. Just go ahead. I don't care.
I want to go to Man again. So Man, please jump in again, brother. Go ahead.
All right. So I would say you put Harrow ahead of me. So let's ask if you would switch up.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, Harrow, you didn't have your hand drop down.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, he's okay. He's okay. So
no, he's come up real quick. Harrow, did you want to go ahead? Oh, he's come off mic, so I'll let him go ahead quickly. Harrow,
yeah, I just had a quick question. It's a little late where I am, so I'm appreciate that I was able to join the stream early so I can ask and then listen to the rest of it after I go to bed. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for what you all are doing. It's been great to listen, and especially these Remnant podcasts. I like to give a disclaimer. I had a question about the show Pluribus, and I don't want to give any spoilers to anyone who wants to listen to it after being recommended to the show by LiquidZulu. My question was the scene when Usos was taken from the jungle to the hospital. I was thinking about that, and would a man who's found unconscious and taken to a hospital, if he wakes up and immediately wants to leave as he did, is he liable for any payments or any expenditures that the hospital made? And do you think that changes based on the fact that this hive virus is not using their own resources and they're acting with other people's?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So I think from Manusos's perspective, it doesn't change at all. He was just taken there. He was effectively stolen the same way that the Hive stole everybody's bodies. So Manusos isn't liable for that. But like I do like the character moment that he, you know, even still he's like, you know, fucking print me out a bill then. Print me a bill and I'll pay it when everything's okay. You know, that's a very good character moment. I loved that very much. But I would say that Manusos would not be liable for any of that. But it's just, you know, it's just another thing of, no, fuck you, I'm rejecting you, and you don't have anything. Everything you have is stolen. I'm not gonna have it. I'm not gonna lie with you at all. So I do see where he's coming from there. But yeah, no, he would not be liable for that payment.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm gonna see y'all later. I'm gonna have to listen to this in the morning. It's late here. Bye bye.
So yeah, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for that, Harrow.
I do have
did you want to jump in real quick?
I do have a $50 super chat, which is that's a lot of fucking money. Thank you very much to Brinkwill. My aunt gave me Christmas money on the stipulation that I donate a bit of it to put a smile on someone's face. I've been waiting for you to stream. I'm choosing to make a Scottish anarchist smile. Well, thank you for your work. That's very nice. Thank you very much. That is very lovely. And thank you to your aunt as well. That's very nice.
That is really, really cool. Man, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So I have one suggestion which we can use to, you know, get Alex O'Connor to debate Zulu. We could make like a 3-hour video about him, you know, destroying his entire worldview. I think
3.5
that has
hour.
a good hit rate. Yeah, that has a good hit rate with these guys, you know. So yeah. So
Anatomy of the Celebra Skeptic or the Celebra
yep,
Motivist.
yep. And so, first of all, yeah, I would like also to say that now that the divinity debate is out, the you know, the entire objectivist movement can stop being on my back collectively. So there is that. And though I have like some questions that I would like to ask Zulu. So the first question would be, as we recently remember the you know, infamous C4SS tweet about like you know, white people or something like the traitor to, a treason to whiteness is service to civilization, which of course is collectivist nonsense. And uh, but something here really confuses me about these people, because they seem to be pretty much like, they seem to be consistent anarchists. They don't call themselves ANCAPs, but from what I see, most left Rothbardians are consistent with the legal theory, but they're like basically vokes outside of the legal theory. So, would you consider these people libertarians? Because technically they are, and so they are part of the movement, but they certainly are very strange to me. Like, you know, like how are you coming from broadly a, you know, critical Marxist, you know, like that kind of point of view, the critical theory point of view? How are you getting to the nap, or are they just like taking the nap and just like you know, just either just stitching together a philosophy based on vibes? And another thing is, like, would you prefer these people to exist? Because you know, there can be the argument that if there are to be vokes, I would rather like my vokes to be ANCAPs. So you know, like, is that a valid thing to say?
Yeah, so there's, are they libertarians, and is it better that is it good that they're around? So I would say, are they libertarians? Certainly not the people who are saying things like treason to whiteness is loyalty to humanity. They are not libertarians. I'm speaking of the market anarchists here, and this tweet is one reason why. You know, I've said it many times before. I'm very suspicious of people who are afraid of the C word. They have capitalism phobia. They're just very afraid of the C word. You know, you see these guys going around these agorist circles the market anarchist circles. I'm very suspicious of them, because inevitably they end up spouting some leftist garbage, right? They're the prags of old, and they're very much infected by the prags of old, and there's very little dissent that I see coming from the market anarchists against this kind of garbage. So those ones which are infected with this, I don't think they are libertarians. To be a libertarian, I think you have to accept the non-aggression principle. That's it, and then you're a libertarian. I'm a thin libertarian in that sense. If you accept the non-aggression, it's a coalition. Libertarianism is a coalition fundamentally. It's not philosophy; it's a coalition. Where if you accept the non-aggression principle, then you're part of that coalition. Now there definitely are some market anarchists and agorists and whatnot who do accept the non-aggression principle, and yeah, sure, they're in the tent. But certainly not all of them. Now, are they better than the, standard wokes? I mean, yeah, they're better than a straight-up communist, but in another sense, they're more insidious. And we need to be more suspicious of them, because at least with a communist, at least if someone's going around saying, I love Karl Marx, and I want to create a dictatorship of the proletariat, at least then you're like, okay, well, great. I understand where you're coming from, and you're not even pretending to be one of me. But these C4SS types, and the prags in general, the old prags, that is, they're insidious in the way that they kind of infiltrate the movement, and that's very, very, very damaging. And I think not enough has been said about that, and that's why when I saw that tweet, I really went out and attacked them. And, by the way, this all kind of kicked off because a contributor to C4SS, James _Conkin on Twitter, was arrested by ICE for his tweets, where he was saying that ICE agents deserve to have some bad things happen to them. We'll say it that way.
Based.
He was arrested for that and has an injunction against him where he's not allowed to go on social media at all. And me and all my guys, we were on that way before C4SS ever got on that. And then in the midst of all this, they're tweeting out this bullshit about how treason to whiteness is loyalty to humanity. And, rubbed some people the wrong way a little bit. And we were like, fuck you. Like, just go fuck yourself. Like, and that kind of kicked off the whole thing. And then I started shitting on them a whole lot. And I think it was deserved.
Apparently it was... apparently it was before...
it was before, but, it's just...
Under ice.
I would say deserved. Deserved still.
Yeah.
Like, you posted your anti-white tweet just before we found out about when you were contributors, and then you waited like days before, backing up your By the way, me and James, we're not exactly on like, we're not the best of friends. Like we've scuffled before on Twitter, and yet I was way before C4SS. I was way before them in tweeting how this is abhorrent.
Yep.
That he was arrested. I was way before them. So deserved. I don't give a shit about trying to defend them with this little nitty-gritty shit. Like, fuck them.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is tweeting out how, treason to whiteness is good is better any time. Okay, it doesn't actually matter whether it was before or after they found out about James Conkin. It was just a bad tweet in general. So that's kind of my position on it.
Yeah. And if I may say something, which would be like, this is my view of things. I think the way they are viewing the concept whiteness, and of course this is a package dealing of sorts. The objective is, we know about the term package dealing. So they're packaging together, let's say, things like slavery with the concept of whiteness, which would be a wrong package, right? Like it's like packaging together harming other people with selfishness. So I think that's the flaw.
And it's also just one of these academic, like, kind of word sorcery games that leftists always love to play, and they're trying to play against us as if haven't seen this shit before. They're like, no, when we talk about whiteness, we don't mean anything to do with the white race. It's like, well, no, you're fucking lying, aren't you? Like, either they've swallowed their own fucking supply there, they've swallowed their own propaganda, in which case, like, you're just gullible, and I don't want anything to do with you on a strategic perspective if you're that gullible. Or they're trying to fucking twist the words around to try and trick me. It's like, no, that's not going to work. So it's still, I don't want anything to do with you. So all those people were like, no, when Zulu, when we say whiteness, we don't actually mean anything. It's like, oh, wait, why did you use that word? Why did you use that word? Why did you use the word whiteness if it has nothing to do with white people? Oh no, it was just, that's just what words can mean different things, can't they? Like, this is what they do. They just throw out a random thing. Like, this is a classic nominalist play. Well, words can mean different things, can't they? It's like, this is a complete tangent. You just come in from a completely different direction there. It's not even a tangent. It's perpendicular. You just come in from a completely different direction. This doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about. I don't care that words can mean different things. What do you mean by whiteness? You mean white men. That's what you mean. You're adopting Marxist race theory. That's what you're doing. You're applying Marxian class analysis to white versus non-white. That's what you're doing. That's what whiteness means. That's where it comes from. It comes from critical race theory. I just can't. They're just so dishonest with it. They can't admit what they're saying, and I hate that. That is so scummy. That is so sneaky.
And like, there are a couple of things. First of all, then I get the question, okay, if you are applying the Marxist framework outside of legal theory, how the hell are you getting to the NAP legal theory, right? Like, it really doesn't make sense to me. It perplexes me in a way, And the other thing is, so Roderick Long, who's like somewhat revered in libertarian circles, like, he's part and parcel of C4SS. He's probably like their best guy, right? And like, he used to be an objectivist back in the day, and so, like, how did this happen? I think when I'm free, or if someone else has the time, like, someone do a research into Long's development, because how does someone who know better go through this, and there's something there, and if Zulu would like to comment on that, or MonHop would, like, what do you think about that? Like, he was an objectivist back in the day. How did he become this?
He has definitely done some good stuff before. Like, his work on Iceland, I would say, is better than Friedman's work on Iceland. Friedman's work on Iceland is more famous, but Long's work on Iceland's better, I would say. Like, because he actually approached it from a natural law perspective, whereas Friedman just completely left that out. So, and obviously, the fucking big dunk guys, his fucking like the social media guy for C4SS, I can't remember his name. Like, he did like a whole
Corey something.
Yeah, Corey Massimino or whatever. He did like this tweet where it's like, you guys think that Long is your guy? Well, here you go. And he like showed the tweet to Long, and Long was like, yeah, looks good to me. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't actually make us think better of you. It makes us think worse of Long. It makes me think that Long is a fucking commie. That's what it makes me think. It makes me think that Long is completely compromised, and we should have seen it coming. He keeps going around like every month, it seems. He's completely fucked himself, and he needs our money to stay in his house for another month. And it's like, oh well, you know what? That kind of beggar attitude, like, like, fuck him. Okay, that makes me think worse of Long. You know what? Sue me. I don't care. Okay. How about provide a fucking product? How about that? And then I'll pay you.
Yeah.
Right. I quickly wanted to touch on what, Zulu, you were talking about previously. So I had a back and forth with Charles Koch about this, because he had a tweet where he was talking about
the actual one, or like someone on Twitter.
He was talking about whiteness. And so I just said to him, I was like, this is slightly further down the reply chain, but I think I'll pick it up because this is where it gets interesting. Is I basically said, like, look, whatever characteristics you would associate with whiteness are probably things that I quite like. Um, and so his reply was, I doubt you like the state, slavery, or Yankee elites. And so I'm sitting there like, okay, so I don't know really that much about the American Civil War. I like because I was my knowledge of American history kind of is around the American Revolution, kind of 1760 to 1791 is where I would kind of be relatively well versed in American history, like the American Revolution, and the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, all that kind of stuff. So I got nothing. I got nothing for you on Yankee elites. I have no idea like what the characteristics of the Yankee elites are in general. But as far as the state and slavery goes, like the idea that you're going to associate a practice that has dated back to like before written records like even exist, and has been kind of pretty much ubiquitous across every culture that has ever existed in human civilization up until very, very recently, and which, by the way, was, I think it's fair to say, was most widely ended by European civilizations first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, they took far too long to do it, obviously, and to whatever extent whites enslaved other people, that was obviously terrible. But the idea that you're going to associate that and like the concept of the state as being associated with whiteness, it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, are we actually? Is this actually like a meaningful category? If it's like, well, anything, any kind of slavery and any kind of
White means
statism is
bad.
just whiteness.
Whiteness is badness. White means bad. Like,
yeah, pretty much. That seems to be the
Pretty
take.
black and white, if you ask me.
All right, I want to get through some of these hands.
I will just have to jump in.
Hey, I got two questions left.
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead,
I got
Mark.
two
Yeah,
questions.
But before you do that, Mon, I do have to jump in. Nuclear Mayhem 9238 for another 20 knock. Thank you very much. I love those kroners. I gobble them up. We pay you because your product is banger, Zulu. Indeed, and this I do want to comment on this. Like, this is why I like structure my course in the way that I do. Not like, logical structure or anything like that. I mean like payment structure. Like, the reason why I do where you can look at the entire course, you can read the entire course for free, and I do zero work to try and prevent people from pirating the video version. I do zero work to do that. Like, it's out there, guys. If you didn't know, you can pirate it pretty easily. I don't deal with that because what I'm trying to do first and foremost is to get the information out there, and I trust that like people who see that information and understand it and really vibe with it, and who would want to pay money for it, they will have the integrity to go, yeah, I want more of this stuff, and they'll pay for it. And you know what? If that stops being effective, then I'll have to pivot. I'll have to figure out some other way to monetize. But thus far, it's worked. Like, if my target audience, and this is why, by the way, also, like, you see so many courses, it's like $200, and then you get this course. Okay, first of all, the instant you have a $200, you got to pay $200 to go forth, 99+% of people just clicked off your site. Like, goodbye, they're gone forever. They're not going to read your fucking course. So I think that's bad business. And this applies also, like, you'll notice that you don't have like an email sign up. Like, if I had an email sign, you have to sign up with your email. Free. You have to sign up with your email and join my mailing list, and then you get access to the course. Instantly, 70% of people have clicked off. Like that, I don't want to put any barriers from the landing page into the course. Like, you can just, I want it to be as smooth as possible. And that's just good business, I think. Because I think I am a businessman. I'm trying to do business with you. I'm trying to give you a product, which I think is very valuable. and I'm being honest about what that product is. I'm saying that, hey, very honest. I'm saying, hey, here's the entire fucking product. Do you like it? Well, how about pay for it? Because you're an adult. You're an intelligent adult. You know that this doesn't come for free. So, whatever it is, pay for it. Pay however much you think this should cost for you, given your circumstances. And that business model has worked out very well for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
I just recommend the next speaker to be the central guy, because I think I've seen him before. I think he has
The first Mon has to go.
Yeah. Just let me get through my two things. So one thing I would ask is, Zulu, you commented on Jordan Peterson when talking about Alex O'Connor, and you said something to the effect of like, especially recently, he has become something. And like, I have this experience as well. I think you and me both, back in the day, we appreciated him, like back when he first came out, and certainly 12 Rules for Life has some good stuff in it, and like a little bit of bad stuff as well from an objectivist perspective. And Maps of Meaning is really, really profound. But what do you think of Peterson? Like, I do see like a degradation in the quality of his work from his peak. And do you agree with that? And what do you think the reasons might be?
I mean, I think those fucking amphetamines might have scrambled his brain or something. Like he's completely gone off the reservation. He's not particularly worth listening to these days. But he used to be very much worth listening to. And I would still recommend to anybody read Maps of Meaning. He's always gone down these kind of like long paths where he goes into a little bit of voodoo talk. But there's normally something underneath the voodoo talk. But these days it seems like the voodoo talk is just kind of taking the primacy with him.
Yeah. It's mostly voodoo talk now. And the last question, which is kind of a joke question, but I think it might be interesting, would be, so Zulu, would you prefer me to be here talking and collaborating, or would you prefer me to be in your chat and sending a lot of super chats?
Porque no los dos. Why not both? I like money and I like your collaboration.
All right. I'll keep that in mind. All right. I'm not gonna speak for a while because I took a lot of time, and thank you guys.
Yeah. Awesome. Appreciate that, Man. All right, let's get through some of these hands. I want to go to Ace first, and then we'll go to Zark, and then we'll keep it moving. So, Ace, please go ahead.
Thank you, MonHop.
You're going to have to improve your mic real quick.
Hello?
You are very much muffled.
Hello, is that better? Hello?
Yes, way better.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So, of course, I do want to run an argument through you two, if that's okay. It's a quick premise conclusion argument. It's just I want to see your thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so premise one is that agents act using imperfect, revisable beliefs. Premise two is actions occur under real constraints and have irreversible effects. Premise three is
sorry. Can you repeat?
Oh, sorry.
Premise one.
Premise two. Oh, premise one is agents act using imperfect, revisable beliefs.
Using what?
Revisable beliefs.
Agents act using revisable beliefs.
Imperfect, revisable beliefs. So, yeah.
Yeah. Premise two is actions occur under real constraints and have irreversible effects. Yeah.
Actions occur under real constraints and have a real effects.
And have irreversible effects.
I think those stand. Like, the first point is just man is fallible, and the second point is that the consequences of your actions are real and not reversible. I think those stand.
Yeah, basically. And premise three is a reason that fails when error is acknowledged cannot function as a reliable guide to action.
Sorry, repeat that.
A reason that fails when error is acknowledged cannot function as a reliable guide to action.
I could counter that, but I would let Zulu go first.
A reason that fails when error is acknowledged cannot function as a reliable guide to action.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, if someone tries to reason for a contradiction, which is obviously an error, it can't function as a reliable guide to action because of the contradiction. Right?
So, sorry, is that the conclusion? A reason that fails?
No, that's premise 3. Premise 4 is agents can only act meaningfully or can only meaningfully endorse actions guided by reasons they can rely on.
Agents can only act meaningfully or can only meaningfully endorse actions they rely on.
Guided by reasons they can rely on. So reasons that don't refute central axioms, for example.
Agents can only act meaningfully or can only meaningfully endorse actions guided.
Actions guided by reasons that, guided by reasons that they can rely on.
Okay. Just real quick, how long is this argument? How many premises?
I'm on the conclusion now. I'm on the conclusion now. The conclusion is an action is ethically permissible for a actor/agent only if its guiding reasons remain usable under acknowledged fallibility and disagreement.
Can remain permissible for an actor or agent only if...
Only if its guiding reasons remain usable under acknowledged fallibility and disagreement.
Let me just repeat that. An action is ethically permissible for an actor/agent only if its guiding reasons remain usable under fallibility and reasonable disagreement.
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean?
So what I mean by that is, for example, trying to think of the best way to put this, is basically ethical endorsement depends on epistemic survivability.
Okay, so it's like a pragmatist thing.
No, not pragmatist. Because epistemic survivability is not practical survivability. It's not saying what works.
But you're saying
for something to work, it must.
But you're saying an ethical truth is only true. There is only an ethical truth if it's fallible, if it's usable.
But then a theory, but then a theory is a theory on reality. So basically, any theory is usable as long as it isn't contradictory.
Well, if any theory is usable, then it's just like a nothing. Because then every single claim is usable, right? Any true claim is usable, so then it wouldn't break down in the emergency situation. The truth doesn't break down in emergency situations then.
Yeah, I'm basically trying to make the argument that basically for something to be, and it's a hard argument to make because I'm a bit, I have a hard time socially speaking, but that's fine. It's to say that basically, I'm trying to figure out how to put this, but it's to say that basically something can only be permissible if you can acknowledge its fallibility and disagreement, right? So, for example, humans aren't omniscient, basically.
So something can only be true if you can acknowledge its fallibility and have disagreement over it.
Yeah.
I reckon that's probably true of all statements. So I suppose so.
And the reason why I brought up this basically argument is because I wanted to see that I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. That basically sorry, I'm trying to think of the absolute best way to put this. But it's basically an argument against contradictory beliefs and beliefs which go against because if something errors in the reason itself, then it's not a reason and it can't be used as justification, basically.
Okay, so if somebody's making like a contradiction in their statements, then their reasoning is false.
Kind of, but I'm trying to, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I agree with that. I believe Man had an issue with one of your premises here, though.
What premise did Man have an issue with?
Yep. See, I was just saying that there are like two ways of interpreting what you were saying, but I think if you're just saying that a contradiction in your reason, if a contradiction is discovered in your reasoning, then any ethical theory you build from that is false, then yeah, I would agree. But bro, you chose a hell of a set of words to say that, man.
I mean,
there are 5 interpretations in my mind on that.
Basically, the best way to put it, right, and yes, I have an interest in dialect. It's not advanced, it's not subvanced, it's just kind of an interest in dialect. It's a British dialect.
Yeah.
But basically, in plain text, the argument is humans live in a real world that basically limits what can be done. We disagree about values and make mistakes because resources are scarce and our actions sometimes clash. To live together without chaos, we need rules to manage conflicts, but those rules do not need rulers, moral authority, or claims to ultimate truth. And they should be minimal, revisable, and exist only to prevent interference and not to impose meaning or values. Basically.
Yeah, I would agree with that broadly. It's we're coming at basically the non-aggression principle from another angle, right? And I think you could clean up the wording a little bit to make it more understandable, but I think where you're going is sound. So yeah. See, because I would say the way you are using the word reason, you're using it like you should use the word reasoning instead, because reason is the broader term, right? Reason is the whole method itself. It's the faculty itself. So I would say use contradictory reasoning instead of the word reason. So fixes like that. But I think your the spirit of your argument stands, even if I would disagree with terminology and structure here or there.
Yep. So, is there any disagreements? Does anyone have? And thank you, by the way. Does anyone actually disagree heavily with these statements?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not
I think
trying to pass it too closely, but it seems okay from my perspective.
You know, I've got a Discord server. If one of my Discord server, like somebody who is contributing, let's say Man here, he's contributed somewhat to my channel. If Man was arrested, and I heard that Man was arrested, I would tweet out that second I would be calling, I won't say what I was about to say, but I'd be calling for some things to happen. I would be very, very much upset. I would be immediately on the ball. If MonHop here, he's my contributor here on the Remnant episode 3, brilliant episode number. If MonHop was arrested by, fucking Australian police services,
Probably not far off at the moment, to be honest.
I would be. I would tweet about that within the minute, not even within the hour, not even within the day, within the minute. I would be talking about that and trying to rally people for his support. C4SS, apparently they take a bunch of fucking deliberation for that. No deliberation required for saying that white people deserve to die. No deliberation required there. A bunch of deliberation. Should we support our guy? Should we support this guy who's been contributing to us for years? I don't know. It takes a lot of deliberation there. This seems like a retarded fucking counter here. It doesn't make any sense to me what you're saying here. I think he may have gone.
Yeah, I think he's either lagged out or left again. I don't know. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he lagged out. Anyway, so we'll keep it rolling. Man, do you want to jump? Man, do you want to jump? Man, your mic seems to be a little bit questionable at the moment. At least it was when you first started talking, but no, it's not better now. It's still not great. That's better.
Now? So it really just matters which room I'm in.
Yeah, you're still like borderline, but good enough to be able to mostly hear.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit in the exact place where I was.
Okay, so, yeah, don't move a muscle.
So the geography overlords can let me speak. So, so first of all, I would like to thank Zulu for the compliment. It's very heartfelt. Thank you. And I would like to say also, it's far more important to be on time and later be found out to be wrong, because what's like you later issue an apology and it's fine, right? But like in events like this, when things like this happen, like you have to, like, seconds matter, minutes matter, hours matter, right? You got to be on it, And so I would still say that, sure, like they were deliberating, they're an organization, but then that's a critique of their organizational structure, right? That they should be more, on point. They should be faster about these things. So that critique still stands, and sure, it's not
imagine
nobody's saying that,
Imagine if their own headquarters was raided by the police or something. Some horrible thing happens in market anarchist, news. Some horrible thing happens in market anarchism. And it takes them days to deliberate. Should we use a full stop there? Or should we use a semicolon? Like, this is bad. Like, why do you have a social media manager? The social media manager should be on that shit. He should be that minute. He should be tweeting out news. We're in a 24-hour news cycle here, guys. You need to be fast with this shit. Like, come on.
Or you could say just reportedly, right? Just to make sure it's fake news.
Allegedly, reportedly, right? Like, there are words to be used here. And, it's like, sure, like, if you're going by more traditional organizations, like, yeah, they take time, but that's the problem with them. They take time. They shouldn't be. And sure, like, they might be doing some things. They might be helping James out, and I really hope he gets off. I'm pretty sure, I did a little of a review of his legal case. I'm pretty sure he gets off. The charges they have against him are very, very far-fetched. So here's hoping for James, but like, C4SS should be an organization in his corner with far more veracity and far more support, and like far sooner as well, right? Like, it's 24-hour news cycle. This should have been viral. This should have been, that visibility might help him. And I would want to, I've approached Justice as well, and the offer is always on the table, man. Whenever, if you ever want to do a podcast about this or anything about this, any way I can help you out in this, I actually tried calling the American embassy in India, but they literally said we can't do anything about. So like, what kind of, So in my limited capacity, I did all I could, and I would say C4SS should have been a little faster. So I think that's the argument that's been given, and then the argument about the the white word thing was that's a separate.
Yeah, so I want to. Okay, so
Be
I want to get
you
through
know,
some more of
like
these hands, and if people want to,
there is priority all here, because if they if anybody in the organization knew about it, it should have been much faster. So it's far better to be on time but wrong and later issue an apology than wait too long and miss your chance to defend someone you care about. So that would be my 2 cents on that.
yeah, for sure, man. I want to. I know Justice is here again, but I want to try and get through some more of these hands because there are people that have been waiting a while, and we.
Yeah, get through the
Can you hear me?
hands.
Or
Yeah,
am I edged out?
Mom, we can hear you, but you're lagging as shit. Yeah, get through the hands.
Anyway, with that said, Jeremy's up on the speaker panel now, so obviously, want to introduce him and say hello, Jeremy. How's things?
Hey fellas, it's and I mean there could be women here, but I'll say hey fellas. It's
Unlikely. I
it's
will probably say.
yeah, look, it's good to it's good to chat with you guys. You know, look, we can yell at each other, and maybe we will, but I think part of what makes these debates a little bit vicious at times is because we do agree with each other on a lot of things. You know, I would guess, and you can of course tell me that I'm an idiot here, but I would guess, you know, we agree with each other on 90 to 95% of things, and that's what makes us so bothered by the areas that we disagree. And I'm not really a utopian, but to the extent that I'm a utopian, like I want a society that produces justice, judicial outcomes, court outcomes, resolves disputes in a manner that would be pretty close to the types of decisions that I suspect, you being Monarcho Hopian and Zulu, would make. And so I think to the extent that we have a disagreement, it's about how we get these outcomes. And so that would sort of be my opening position here, is that we agree on a lot of things. We do ultimately want outcomes. Like, even if you're more of a more deontological than I am, you still want a society that produces deontological outcomes. And so we have these disagreements over how you produce them. So feel free to dispute the premise, or feel free to accept the premise and engage in dispute past the premise. But that's my sort of opening statement.
For sure. I'll throw to Zulu real quick after I've said this, but I just wanted to agree with you off the front end. Like, we do agree. Again, 90 to 95% is probably the rough mark as far as, prescriptions that we would both have. And as you said, that tends to be why these disagreements can be, so vociferous, you might say, because when you can see the other person like has the same fundamental reasoning positions as far as like how they're building up to their positions, and then so from my perspective, and I'm sure from your perspective, it's like, well, why the fuck can't this guy just get it? Like, at least when you're like arguing with the communists or something, you can kind of see, okay, this person just lacks reasoning ability. Okay, it's clear that this person just doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're just starting from fundamentally absurd positions and premises. And so at least you can chalk it up to, well, we're just never going to agree because this person is just starting from the completely different and completely wrong place. And so you're right. It's probably a result of the level of disagreement and the as I said, the forcefulness, I suppose, of it is probably a result of, as you said, the fact that we start from similar positions potentially, and it's just, you kind of like, oh, well, why can't this guy just get it? So anyway, I'll throw to Zulu on that if you wanted to, jump into kind of I suspected we were going to go to the strategic stuff pretty quickly. So Zulu, if you want to jump in on that at all, please go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And also, thank you very much to Jeremy for coming on. I think it's a good idea to, even though there are plenty of discussions on immigration, of course. I don't know that I've seen. I certainly haven't done any with Jeremy before, so it should be interesting. So I would say my kind of problem with that opening there is the framing of it. Like, I agree that we probably agree on, if we were to look into our mind's eyes and think, what would the ideal society look like? Where would I want to live? it's probably going to look incredibly similar for each of us, at least as far as like, you know, rights enforcement and whatnot is concerned. But I don't take that as being fundamental when the question is, how should anarcho-capitalists, how should libertarians feel about some issue? It's not what sort of bureaucratic structure do I want to deal with some sorts of problems which might come up. And I do agree that, you know, I've said this before, probably of the people who are open borders, I am like on the top, like 1% of people who hate the immigrants the most. Like I very much see all of the problems. I understand the problems. I'm not just like, oh, immigrants are so brilliant. And then, you know, there is a question of, well, how do you deal with these problems? And that's a valid question. But I think the more fundamental question is, well, what do you have the right to do with respect to that? What are the rights in the question? I don't see law as studying like a structure, a bureaucracy. Law is just, it's a set of facts about what is the proper way to handle this dispute, given that there is such a thing as scarcity. We can have conflict. So what is proper with respect to conflicts? And I think the answer is very, very much just the non-aggression principle. And the non-aggression principle and all the corollaries you can get from that. I don't think that law goes any further than that.
Yeah, I think the problem is, and I by the way, I also I like you guys. To me, I see debates as a failure mode, right? Debates are for when two people can't communicate in good faith, and so therefore we need to have an adversarial debate. And it's good that we have debates when we reach that stage. I would like to keep this as like more of a, you know, sort of cooperative, you know, conversation rather than digging our heels in. You know, let's say that we may not have precisely the same interpretation of the NAP, but let's say that we like roughly do. It seems clear to me that other people can have vastly different interpretations of what's aggression. It's easy for a socialist to say that, you know, yeah, look, it's aggression when you're not supporting the poor, you're killing them. That's an act of aggression. You know, it's aggression when you're not masking during COVID. You know, that's aggression. And obviously, these are not my definitions of aggression, but this idea that, like, part of the problem that I'm trying to get people to see is that we abstract things to these words, but the ways that the words map back onto reality inside of individuals' heads is different. And I'm trying to reconcile this in a way that's maximally compatible with, you know, sort of classic libertarian ideology. You know, my problem is sort of a lot of the classic libertarian thinkers have sort of not grappled with the fact that, you know, oh, it's just the NAP. Like, it's not that simple, because a lot of people's interpretation of what aggression is would not be our interpretation of aggression. So.
Sure, and definitely a lot of people, I would say, are wrong about what aggression is, but I don't really see what the upshot is with respect to, like, me, right? I think that the fundamental thing that I should be doing is just saying that, well, no, you're wrong about, you know, if you're saying that it's aggression to exploit the proletariat or whatever. That's not what aggression means. Aggression means this, that, and the other thing, and just win on the level of philosophy, and everything else I think is just downstream of that. I don't see what it matters that really people are wrong about things, because people will always be wrong about things.
Well, I'm sort of on the opposite side of theory here, where I see the mission of free staters, of libertarians in New Hampshire, to attempt to achieve our ideology to the maximum possible degree in the real world. And if that requires compromising a little bit, then, well, you know, we'll compromise, even if we're not happy about it. And so, you know, like, how do you produce a society that produces legal outcomes, that produces justice systems, you know, whether you're going ANCAP or minarchy or something else, that's going to produce outcomes that share your definitions? Because my sense is if you have a society in which 95% of people do not agree on roughly our understanding of what aggression is, you're never going to get justice systems that produce those outcomes. And so therefore it becomes a requirement, and we can debate how much so, but it becomes somewhat of a requirement that at least a decent portion of the populace, certainly those with power, share or roughly share our understandings of aggression.
Definitely true. I will say that is I know we're probably going to get to a place where we'll disagree like down the line, but I agree, and that's what I think you have to do in order to produce this society where the people who are running the justice systems are actually adhering, for the most part at least, to what I understand to be the correct theory of law. And the way I'm doing that is, I think the fundamental way is, again, winning on the philosophy. Now, there are a few ways you can do that. You can, go out, do Isaiah's job and reach the remnant and so on, and that, over the long run will win. Or even, I think New Hampshire is a good example of this. You stack the deck. You cram as many people who accept your philosophy into one area, and then you have effectively changed the philosophy in that area. But that is the fundamental, I'm saying, that you have to change the philosophy, and then the bureaucratic structures are all downstream of that changed philosophy.
Okay, so then what's the heart of the disagreement here? If we accept that there must be some consideration of the proportion of people in a polity sharing your interpretations and meanings of words, there's still some sort of and by the way, like, I don't think I have all the answers. I often find that some of the people who disagree with me, they have a stronger vision than I do. I feel like often I'm like trying to get smart people to simply accept the premise. Because if we accept the premise, we can work together to find the solutions. Because I still want to achieve libertarianism in the real world. I would, I've read all the, all the books. I want to achieve the closest to this kind of thing that we can do in reality. And, and then I try to square the theory with reality, and then all these people get mad at me. And so, like, what is the heart of the disagreement? Is it that we have to, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Sometimes it feels like the answer is we have to follow the NAP, even if it means we lose. And that's certainly something I wouldn't accept. So if that's the disagreement, we can get into that. But if it's something like, hey, there's a way to get these outcomes another way, that I would be much more open-minded to hearing and, and being persuaded to.
I'll just jump quickly in on that one because I think you did. I think your suspicion is correct. I think the heart of the disagreement is that myself and Zulu are going to hold the position that you should never initiate conflicts. That the non-aggression principle should be followed in all cases. That is going to be the heart of the disagreement. And I was gonna, before you actually, spoke to it, I was going to say, look, our position is going to be that the policies that I've seen yourself and like the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire advocate for online, as far as immigration, and we can get into immigration specifically if you want to, and a variety of these other positions, I would consider to be not adhering to the non-aggression principle. And to that end, like, as Zulu kind of spoke to earlier, our position isn't that the non-aggression principle describes some future state of affairs that we hope to eventually arrive at, as far as the bureaucratic structure of society and how different systems of of dispensing justice and legal norms and that kind of thing. That's not what we think the NAP describes. What we think the NAP describes is the justified boundaries of interpersonal conduct. And so if that is the case, then it's going to follow that it holds whether we live in a society that broadly accepts the NAP or not, right? So whether or not it is the case that society more broadly accepts, hey, we should follow the NAP, or the bureaucratic structures are using that as their foundation for law, it's still going to be the case that myself as an individual and everyone else that's in this space or on YouTube or just in society in general, it still follows that they ought to follow the non-aggression principle in every case, even if it is the case that the society more broadly doesn't accept the non-aggression principle. And I just quickly, and we can get more into this, but I want to jump to Zulu. I don't accept the idea that it following the non-aggression principle requires you to accept all these bad outcomes that yourself and the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire's X page, which I know you're a part of, but I know you're not the only one that posts from that account. The kind of consequences that you guys will put forth as being a result of following the NAP maximally, I don't accept that they would occur, and I don't accept the position that seems to be advocated for, that the non-aggression principle implies some level of pacifism or refusal to respond to people who are potentially going to initiate conflicts against you. Anyway, we'll jump to Zulu, and then Jeremy can obviously jump back in on that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a bit. If you two do have, at least in future, if you two do want to go back and forth on something, I mean, feel free. This isn't just my podcast, so I will just put that on the table. Definitely doesn't just need to be me and Jeremy going at it. I did want to pick up, because I agree with what MonHop was saying there. I do want to pick up on this notion of, well, what about if we're following the NEP and that leads to us losing? I think that is really where the big disagreement originates from, because I don't think it is the case that you can kind of break the rules that we are supposed to be setting forth, and then that can somehow bring about the world we want, right? Because what would it look like for libertarianism to be victorious? It would look like the philosophy of the day, at least in some area, be including libertarianism. Now, I don't think it's possible to achieve that if you are openly advocating that libertarianism is false, which is what you'd have to do if you wanted to advocate a violation of the non-aggression principle. If you advocate to commit aggression, you're not going to sway the needle towards a world where people think it's wrong to commit aggression.
Well, I feel like I can simply say that immigration, or at least a sufficient quantity of it, and I by the way, I think these questions are tricky. I think immigration is analogous to other classic libertarian problems, like, what's the quantity of photons that constitutes light pollution? What's the quantity of noise that constitutes noise pollution? How many sieverts can you emit from your house before you're harming your neighbor? These are classically hard libertarian problems, and the libertarian literature, mostly says these should be resolved locally, that there's not an absolute answer that can be, derived a priori. And I think that immigration is analogous to this. And so I'm not necessarily accepting the premise that our policies are, quote unquote, NAP violations. I think it's easy for me to say simply that it is not a NAP violation. That if immigration would, if I have an existing, let's imagine we're starting from a roughly libertarian state, or not a state, a roughly libertarian society, maybe it's an ANCAP and it's all voluntary or whatever. But if someone is taking acts, if someone is performing, immigration, or immigration is happening in such a way that it would disrupt or ruin or destroy the existing, justice system that I have that is roughly NAP compliant, then I feel like I can simply say, well, the immigration is a NAP violation, and if you don't like that definition, then it still seems like even in your own framework, you're going to have to deal with people like me, and so it feels like there's just no way around the fact that if you want justice outcomes, if you want jurisprudence, court-based outcomes, that are going to be analogous, that are going to be compliant with what you want, there has to be some consideration for the makeup of your society. There's just no way around this.
So I think I might have got that already. So are you saying that you're saying this is sort of like a continuum problem? It's at least analogous to the problem of how many photons is it before it becomes like, you know, a giga laser which destroys your house, right? So for those continuum problems, that there has to be some principal difference at either end of the continuum. The principal difference with the laser gun is, in one case, it clearly creates conflict because your house is destroyed. You can no longer use your house anymore. And if it's just a single photon, it doesn't create conflict. So that's what we'd have to have for a continuum. And it sounds like you're saying the principal difference in the case of immigration is that if you have many, many, many immigrants, at least of a certain type, there are immigrants who you would believe that they're not like liable to become libertarians because of their biological makeup or whatever. I'm assuming there. Are you saying that that is like sort of what you see as the principal difference between many immigrants of a certain type and very, very few immigrants?
Yeah, I think the problem is roughly like that. If we imagine starting from a community of 1,000, perfectly NAP compliant, to all the listeners of this podcast, we're all perfect NAP followers, and we all live in a community, and there's 1,000 of us. Could we handle, one Somalian? Yeah, we'd absorb one Somalian without any difficulty. But if there's 1,000 of us, and could we handle 100,000 Somalians? No, we wouldn't have our society at all. And I do believe, despite being a famous internet racist, I do believe there's some proportion of Somalians. I believe it's like a very low proportion. I do believe there's some who are compatible. So my claims are never it's zero from any place. But it clearly the rates do vary, quite a bit. And we don't even have to imagine that Somalians. We could imagine it's 100,000, white socialists. The problem would be the same. And so at low degrees, you can handle it and you can integrate it. But if you, if your population is going to be completely displaced, there's no way that you can maintain your systems. They simply won't work. And so it does seem analogous, to these types of continuum problems.
Okay, so I would say the reason why that isn't a principal difference is you need to separate actions when you're doing legal analysis, right? Some specific actions being done by the immigrants would have to be destroying this NAP compliant legal system. And it's definitely not clear to me that the specific action being done which destroys this system is that they moved over from Somalia or from California or wherever it is. That isn't clear to me at all. What would be clear to me is if they come and they start voting for socialist policies. Sure, you could say, hey, they're being aggressive there. They're trying to implement some socialist dictatorship in this area of New Hampshire, in Grafton, New Hampshire, or whatever it is, where we've already pretty much got Tankapistan. They're being aggressive against us. I could see that, but you would need to look at the specific actions, and then when we've identified the specific actions being done, then we can figure out, well, what is the proper way to deal with that aggression?
To be clear, and just to jump in on this, because Jeremy, obviously you specifically framed this within the context of an NAP compliant society, right? And in that case, we're going to presume here that all the land in that society is privatized. Every single person, every single piece of property has an individual owner. So in that case, yeah, you could preemptively exclude people on literally any basis you wanted to. You wouldn't have to prove that there was any aggression that was going to be carried out by that person. You could just say, well, I suspect that this person might in the future aggress, so I'm going to preemptively remove you from my property, right? Because it's your property. The problem is that that's not the case at the moment, right? Where we're talking about, public property, which, Zulu and I are going to have a specific view on, the ownership status of that land. But suffice to say, we don't think that the state has the right to that land. And so for them to exclude people is unjustified according to the non-aggression principle. So in an ANCAP society, you could basically do exactly what you're describing. I mean, with limits, obviously, there's elements of proportionality that need to be followed, and gentleness as far as how you can exclude people from your property. But broadly, yes, like you could exclude people on, as I said, literally any basis that you wanted to, and it would be justified if it was property that either you owned or you were acting at the behest of the owner. So in that specific context, like, it's fine. You can do exactly what you're describing. It's just within the context of, you know, living in reality, so to speak, that kind of changes things from our perspective.
Sure, and I see a number of people raising hands, and so I want to let them jump in. Although it's your show, so I'll let you call on them. I think this idea, and I am for private property maximalism, but this idea that private property maximalism is I am myself on my own property, and nothing I do spills out to my neighbors or those around me. I think is kind of foolish or naive, or is a sort of spherical cow type thinking. Even if we start from every man owns their own property and everything is contract law, I'm going to contract with my neighbors. We're going to reproduce neighborhoods. We're going to reproduce communities, and our communities are going to have, rules. I have no desire to, I don't want to enforce immigration law in Minneapolis and Minnesota. I only want to force that immigration law in those places because I'm unfortunately in a compact with them, and anyone there is in my nation generally. If they were independent of me, this would be fine. But when we look at the local level, it's never. There's always going to be some kinds of agreements. There's going to be some kinds of contractual agreements. And again, we as libertarians and voluntarists and anarcho-capitalists, we should want them to be as voluntary as possible. But there's always going to be some kind of agreements that are going to exist, with me and my neighbors. And if I, abut, if a bunch of, citizens, abut a factory, and the factory owner wants to bring in, 100,000 third worlders or 10,000, let's go back to our 1,000 person town. If they want to bring in, even 500 or 1,000 people from the third world who are, who are way more likely to litter, who are way more likely to commit crime, who are way more likely to do these things, there's just no way that this does not, spill over. Sure, you would say, okay, well, they have an insurer, and their insurer is guaranteeing that they won't leave their property, and so on and so forth. And so it's like, okay, if we get in like very perfect, types of worlds, maybe I can kind of see this. But in reality, if this is happening today, when a bunch of people from the third world come into, an American town that is not full of third worlders, they change the town. There's just no way that this doesn't, and I don't just mean change the town culturally. I mean, they commit more crime, they litter more, they degrade the town. And these are negative externalities. And so even if you say, oh, well, we should simply punish them, when they commit violations, that's still an externality, because we know that it's going to increase the costs of producing justice. It's going to increase the policing costs. It's going to increase the amount of resources required to stop these people. And so this idea that, a property owner, can simply invite infinity numbers of these people onto their land, like, are they staying entirely on the land? If they're not, then you immediately have externalities. And even if they're staying entirely on the land, are they really? Like this again, it seems like there's no way around this being something of a risk. And again, one of the reasons I'm not a conservative and still consider myself a libertarian is I believe in markets. I believe in free markets. I would like market-based ways of solving these problems. I'm for insurance markets and ways of solving these problems in market-based ways. But to say that it's simply not a NAP violation, and the factory can have, can double the population of a town and bring in, a bunch of third world workers who are likely to have negative externalities. I don't accept this even in a NAP framework, and it's even easier to reject it in a consequentialist framework.
I think we definitely could go into this more, but I don't want to make a point and then go, okay, well now we go back into the hands or anything, because then you're not able to respond. But if we do want to go to hands, because people, they might have relevant questions, I think that would be appropriate. We've been at this for like half an hour now. It seems appropriate to do at least a couple hands.
Yeah. For sure. I will say to people that like we are going to obviously this is a different episode to how we normally function. So it is going to be primarily like this kind of back and forth. So yes, absolutely people can jump in and we'll go to Man and then we'll go to you can always change your mind. But for going forward as far as people putting their hands up, absolutely we'll let you jump in at some point and ask a question, but keeping kind of things as brief as possible so we can make sure the dialogue keeps up in the kind of frame that it's been going. But yeah, anyway, Man, jump in, man, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So I don't know if Jeremy remembers, but around 6 months back, we used to have a lot of back and forth along these lines only. And so, first of all, I would say that I've been following Jeremy for a long time. He used to be my favorite person on the Free Stater podcast back in the day, 2, 3 years ago. I don't know what happened to that. But with, you know, basically him, I don't know if he moved away or he just always believed in, the uh, basically the anti-nap views. I think there is more nuance to his views listening to this, but it certainly does not come off as nuanced on the LPNH and his personal account. So, so there is a lot of admiration of Jeremy's past in me, and of course, thus there is anger online because once again, it's like, well, this guy believes how basically a lot of what I believe. How come he is not coming to the same conclusions, right? And I would preface it with that. I would, though, in the continuation of discussion, let's think about that. Like if you have a town of 1,000 NAP compliant libertarians, right? And we're talking about Ancapistan. We're talking about pure ANCAP frameworks of things. So if you have just those 1,000 people, like, why would you in? There would be, of course, voluntary contracts on the basis of who you can and cannot invite. And you wouldn't want to invite socialists. You wouldn't want to invite fascists. You wouldn't want to invite NAP breakers, right? And so I feel like this is a redundant problem. Like when people talk about open borders and immigration enforcement, we're talking about the current government way of doing things, right? And because there is public property, uh, on that public property, the government is illegitimate to, enforce anything because the government should not exist in the first place because it's a NAP violation. And the negative externalities that Jeremy speaks of are real, but they're caused by the public property. And so the advocacy should not be that, hey, look at all these negative externalities, therefore we should empower the government more in the area of immigration enforcement, and also because you don't just get immigration enforcement, you get a lot of other things on top of that, right? Like statism bleeds over other places then. But the conversation should be use the same concrete instances of those externalities and advocate for privatizing property, right? Because right now libertarians don't hold power, right? Even in New Hampshire, there is an influence of libertarianism in the NH House, as much as I know, but it's not absolute power, right? And so, like, the option that you have is not really should libertarians support open borders or closed borders, because that question will never come up. When we have a libertarian society, the question will become moot because everything gets privatized. It's that should we use the problems caused by public property and immigration on top of that? Should we use that as a means of now supporting the government, like LPNH often does? And what that does is that, you know, like I made a point today that every major libertarian online, right? LPNH has disagreements with them and has clashed with them. So the goal of LPNH, and I really believe in the Free State Project, and I would one day want to settle in New Hampshire. And so, the goal should be to advertise to libertarians and not to, random right wingers who hate us as much as anybody else, right? So, like, don't these are real problems, but there are NAP compliant solutions to these problems and NAP compliant ways of thinking about these problems. And that should be the messaging coming from the from LPNH, from Jeremy, from Free Staters, right? Like, use this as a means of showing the problems with public property and the need for privatization. And of course, the problem of infinity immigration, where court systems, private contracts, voluntary associations, neighborhood associations, to deal with all of that. That, and it's not that immigration is only harmful; it's also in many ways beneficial, right? So, like, there are costs and benefit analysis on top of that, and like, what kind of immigrants? Do we want this type of that type? Like, there are 10,000 questions to ask, and those would be done in a market. That's why we can't centrally plan anything, including immigration, right? You don't get infinity anything in a market. Everything has a cost, and so on and so forth. So the market would deal with this. We don't need to plan immigration ahead of time. Like, we don't need to plan anything ahead of time. But in the framework that we currently live in, the political capital that LPNH and Jeremy and the New Hampshire libertarians have, like, they should be using this to message to libertarians to move to New Hampshire, and that has to be a libertarian message. If you're going outside of the map and you're pissing off basically every libertarian radical who's the most likely person to move to New Hampshire, you're doing a sabotage of the Free State movement. And you could take the example of the community around in and around Zulu. You could take Per Byland, who was saying the same thing. Stephen Kinsella has also feuded with the LPNH. So if your messaging is leading to all the libertarians thinking that LPNH is not libertarian, not a lot of them will move to New Hampshire, and that has to be taken into account, right? And so I would say that's what I would like to say. And I do appreciate Jeremy for coming on here. Like, I would say that I thought you were much dumber than you are, and so that just gives me hope. So you're much smarter than I think.
Yeah, well, you got to be a little bit dumb to post on X as much as I do. But look, look, it's not. There's a couple of things I would disagree with there. So I definitely do not accept the idea that sort of government property is unowned, and the the comparable sort of alternative scenario is that this land is unhomesteaded or whatever. I think that's wrong. I think that the comparable scenario is much more analogous to a joint stock corporation. I think I am unfortunately trapped in a joint stock corporation with way more people than I want to be trapped in one with. So I'm not defending the entire status quo, but I think the idea that government property is simply unowned is completely incorrect. And part of what I've been in New Hampshire for 10 years, and I've seen who's effective and who isn't. This is a realistic movement that is trying to inch the ball forward, inch by inch by inch. And the types of people who come in here and demand more purism and critique elected anarcho-capitalists who are trying to move the ball forward, facing the messy and real world trade-offs that exist in the real world, I find some of these people to be counterproductive. And I'm not saying that it's everyone here on the call, but I think there are people who manage to get into libertarianism because they hold sort of, and I'm not saying this is you, Man, nor am I saying that it's anyone specifically here, but there are certainly some people who get into libertarianism because it permits them to be angry. It permits them to blame the government for all of their faults. Mm-hmm. It permits them to want to tear things down and drag things into the dirt. And the people I've seen who come here, and so part of both my strategy and LPNH's strategy is we've seen who comes here and who is successful. And we want more of these people. All right. The House Majority Leader in New Hampshire, Jason Osborne, he went to school at Mises. He's a Rothbardian ANCAP. And he's saying, I'm glad that the state of New Hampshire is cooperating with ICE. I think this is part of, sort of the realistic, real world types of compromises that need to be made in terms of how we advance the ball in New Hampshire. And I think if someone is going to come here and be so purist that they're like, all right, I'll give you an example. All right, so like a lot of people here are very like Nat focused. Okay, there's a vote in the New Hampshire State House. And again, we don't always have, you can invent more pure solutions, but often what's on the table is A or B. Okay. And so you're in the State House and there's a vote to go down and tear down statues of communists that are on state property. But you know what?
Good.
Tearing down statues of communists costs tax money. Okay.
Mhm.
So technically speaking, when you press the button to say, let's tear down the statues of communists, you are very slightly spending the tax money of other people that they did not consent to. Okay.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be honest. I want people who slam the green button, who say, yes, of course we want to tear down the statues of communists. Would we like to one day get to Ancapistan? Of course we would. Should that be voluntarily funded? Of course it should. But if the choice is leave the statues of communists up or tax everyone in the state 2 pennies to tear the statues down, I'm slamming the green button because tearing down the statues of the communists continues to change the state demographics in my favor, and it continues to advance the free state movement. And so, you know, and so I see all these people who want to criticize us out of libertarian purism. And I think there's a place for, you know, sort of the celibate monk in our movement, you know, who wants to focus on, you know, this is where we want to be heading towards. I don't want to lose
Being an
track of
ANCAP is a good way to be celibate, by the way.
Well, we have a saying here: you got to breed them for freedom. So, I mean, I don't know. There's, you know, our ANCAPs here tend to have a lot of kids, but you know, I don't like, you know, these people who are in other places. Like we have a decent idea of what we're doing. We're not doing these things for no reason. We know who's successful. We're trying to get more of who's successful. Do we want to, like, I'm all for having a completely privatized immigration policy, but that's not on the table, you know? And so to me, existing immigration policy is much more closer to, you know, when the government is, you know, catching murderers or stopping fraud. And of course, these things should be privatized, but a completely private New Hampshire is still going to most likely, through voluntary contractual agreements built up by the atoms of private property, the most likely scenario is still going to be some immigration restrictions. And so this idea that simply because it wasn't built via those atoms, you know, therefore we have to allow, you know, infinite immigration. I think this is crazy. You know, but to be clear, like, you know, neither myself nor LPNH believes that libertarians only come from one place. I believe there are libertarians all over the world. I believe they are disproportionately in some areas, and I do think libertarians from certain areas need to recognize that they're especially unusual. But I do not believe that you know, any particular ethnicity precludes someone from being a libertarian. So,
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say the fundamental disagreement then is the public property point. Like, is public property unowned or is it? I think you're coming far more from a Hoppian point of view, and I think that should be dealt with Zulu because he's the expert on this topic. But I think that is, if we convince you on that, then you'll come to our side. But I would just deal with the two other questions that two other statements you said, and then I'd hand it over to Zulu, and I'll go to sleep because it's 4 a.m. and I just wanted to talk to you guys, so I just stayed up.
cheers. Thanks for staying up to tune in.
Thank you. And I would say the two things that you said was, one was that Jason Osborne, and by the way, I follow New Hampshire politics very closely, and so because I want to one day be there, right? And I've contributed monetarily in the past as well. So, you know,
sure.
So,
and to be clear, I support New Hampshire making it feasible for libertarians to come here from all over the world. I think that is an important part of what we're you know, trying to do. So
yeah, I know you have said statements in the past, like, but you know, the problem with, I would say, doing it as a reasonable compromise is that, like, if it's just about, you know, murderers and fraudsters and all of those things, and you could do that in a private property setting as well, sure, but ICE is primarily going to target peaceful people as well, right? Like that's the problem is that, and also you're opening the door to the federal government coming in and doing anything, because it's not like like they're not just going to be immigrants. These are thugs, right? Like that's what I would say. Like be very wary of letting those people in. Like those are not good people. Like they live, and of course the FBI visited you, and you were very heroic in scaring them off. Like that could be ICE tomorrow. Like like a president can come in and say that anybody who disagrees with me is no longer a citizen, and then you're on the chopping board, right? So like these things can get out of hand very fast. So I would just say get, like a soft secession, right? Like never cooperate with any federal agency. Like those bills do exist and they can be passed. So I would much farther go on that direction and deal with these things locally, And I would say you'd agree, but uh, uh, I'm not criticizing Jason Osborne. He may have said that and believes that, but broadly, he's a very positive force in the movement. But he's wrong there. And I would say, Mhm.
There's a lot of people with hands up. Why don't we go to some other? I'm not
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to reject what you
Yeah,
said, and I'm not
let
trying
me
to
finish
ignore it.
and I'll be off. I'll be off. Just two seconds, right? On the 2 cents per taxpayer thing, we have a lot of New Hampshire libertarians. Just make it legal to smash communist statues, and people will do it for free, right? Like you don't need to do.
But this is what I'm saying is like this is not on the table. That is not a vote that's going to pass. And so like you often have the choice. Again, we can dream up more idealistic policies, and of course that would be a better policy, but that's
Mhm.
not up for a vote. The only choices of what's going to pass are leave the statue up or have the government go and take them down, at which point you are slightly taxing people. And again, I'm not saying that we can't dream up better scenarios, but that is not what's up for a vote. That is not on the table. Okay. And we should keep that ideal in mind. I do really, again, I do mean it when I say that, like, I think the purists play a role because there's a danger in slipping away from libertarianism. And so I like the fact that we have purists who want to criticize us. But this idea that all the answers are there, I think is also wrong. I see there's like people have been constantly smashing that hand button, so I want to let other people
Okay.
talk.
All right. So just talk about the public property thing with Zulu, and thank you for having me. I'll go to sleep now, and I hope you get converted because you sound very smart and much smarter than I gave you credit for.
All right, Zulu, did you want to jump in on any of that, or we can jump to the next hand? Up to you.
I was away at the toilet for the last bit there, so I won't be able to comment on the very last bit. So I do want to get into this notion of the government property thing. Now, this could go on very long, so perhaps we might have to cap it off without going too much in depth into it. But I think the real problem with government property, these government possessions, is there are three logical possibilities for how many people could ever own it. Right? It's either nobody owns it, one guy owns it, or some group of people own it. If nobody owns it, then clearly it can just be homesteaded. If one guy owns it, if it's like eminent domain, they just like took this guy's house or some other property or whatever, then yeah, clearly that guy, he can go back, he can say like, no, get off here, dirty Californian or whatever it is. I'm completely fine with that. But then when it comes to a group of people owning something, I think that's a logical contradiction. I don't think it's possible for a group to own anything. I can go into my proof of that if you want.
I'm not unwilling to have this discussion if it's the discussion that people want to hear. I feel like this is like a fairly well-tread libertarian argument. I would not ultimately come down on your position. I do understand it. I guess to succinctly give the counter position, if you trace, you can look at the founding of various American municipalities, and there are at least some that are roughly, maybe not perfectly, but are pretty close to, valid under libertarian contract law. 100 citizens came together and they all entered into a contract that said these are the joint rules that are going to govern our property, and only via these mechanisms, a vote of property holders, are the joint rules governing our property, going to be changed. The ideas of covenants are perfectly, I mean, maybe you can dispute, if you have a dispute against these, I'm certainly happy to hear it, but like, to me, covenants are completely valid under, libertarian, theory. And so, I don't think they're all invalid. And I think it is a reasonable, comparable counterfactual that the park in my neighborhood is the joint property comparable to a corporation. I disagree with some of the corporate liability shielding, but the idea of a corporation itself is valid to me. The idea that a bunch of people can contract together and say, we're going to pool our money, we're going to pool our resources, and we're going to govern this entity, in accordance with these rules, that seems valid to me. And so, my problem with the park is that the police that I pay for protect the homeless people who don't pay taxes for it, rather than regarding the park as like unhomesteaded land. I think the counterfactual of the park in my neighborhood is that I would be in a private HOA, and and my tax money would be a voluntary contribution to my HOA to maintain the public park, and the public park would be maintained in accordance with the values of the property owners, rather than the public park being maintained in accordance with all voters, or even worse, it's maintained in accordance with civil rights law and federal interference that says the town can't kick a bum out of the park because it's a violation of, I don't know, the 14th Amendment or some bullshit. That's probably not the 14th Amendment, but some bullshit. And so this is what's offensive to me, not the idea that the park exists, because I'm always comparing things to the counterfactual of a private society. My private society, I'm happy, the money that I'm offended by is the $5,000 a year I had to pay to the public schools, not the $200 a year I pay for the park. I would probably pay the $200 a year for the park voluntarily. Okay. And so it's, that's sort of how I tend to look at these things, is how distant is it from the private counterfactual? The park is much closer to me, than the welfare systems and the public schools.
Sure. So perhaps there actually is some interesting ground to tread here, because obviously people have heard most of my argument for, as it pertains to public property and why group ownership is impossible. That's been gone over. So, I mean, we definitely could get into it, but there are a lot of hands. But I think the interesting ground to tread here is this notion of the covenant. I think that there is a valid way to do covenants where it's, nobody's allowed to paint their house, pink or something in this neighborhood. But it has to be done purely with penalty clauses. I agree completely with the title transfer theory of contracts. So you could have it where, on the condition that you do break this rule, then you have to pay $100 to some guy, and maybe your house is even temporarily transferred to him so you can paint it a normal color. You could do that, because that's all just transferring title of property. What I don't think you can do is the sorts of rules we see where it's, collectivist, in collectivist societies, where it's just completely arbitrary. It's not actually, nobody's basing it in transfer of title to property. And I think that's the only valid sense of a contract. I don't think you can have a contract which says, that you can sell yourself into slavery or whatever. That's the classic example from Walter Block.
Yeah, look, I'm not trying to avoid this debate, but I think it would serve libertarians better if they found ways of explaining how their theories and their beliefs would give people more of what they want. I want a park in my neighborhood. I'm happy to pay money for my park. What my problem with my park is that there are sometimes homeless people in it who are throwing knives at trees, and that makes me want to not take my kids there. That is my problem with the park. If libertarians are going around and saying that park's unowned property, so of course homeless people can take a shit in it, like, this is just the worst way. And again, this is a consequentialist argument, but this is just the worst way to get people to like libertarians. whereas if you can say, well, under libertarian theory, that park would be privatized and it wouldn't have bums in it, and it would be a nice place. And of course, yeah, you would have to pay for it. You wouldn't be a free park. You wouldn't be able. It wouldn't be a socialized park. Like I'm not supporting that kind of thing. But if our ideas don't give decent people who contribute, people who are productive, people who are nonviolent, non-criminal, if our ideas don't make their lives better, we've got one hell of an uphill battle. And so I think it would be way better. And again, this is consequentialist, but I think it would be way better if we were making arguments that explain how our ideas would make these people's lives better, and not telling them, the public school, the government school is unowned property. So of course it's okay if someone wants to spray graffiti on it, because that is just the kind of thing that's very off-putting to a lot of people. And even as a pretty hardcore libertarian, it's off-putting to even me, this idea that the property is unowned, so therefore it can be destroyed and this kind of stuff. And I think the kinds of people who are attracted to that idea are often bad people. And again, I'm not saying all of them. Some of them are just, autistic, systematic people who want to have clear rules. But some of the people, like it's a big problem that there are people who are attracted to libertarianism. And these are some of the people I try to repel with my messaging. The LPNH tries to, repel. These people are anti-civilization. They're anti-decency. And they're against the government, not because it inhibits greater civilization and greater decency and greater productivity and greater thriving, but because the government actually stops violence and people living in the dirt. And so I don't know, I may be avoiding the sort of theory type discussion that you want to be having, and giving you a consequentialist argument, but it's nonetheless my argument.